The dream in Daniel, the 7th chapter, is the first dream that Daniel was given. All that he had to go on and all that he had any knowledge of as far as future events was the dream that had been given to Nebuchadnezzar. And you will observe here that the dream came in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon. It seems that no further revelation was made of future events until the evening time of the Babylonian Empire, and Daniel was in retirement. Daniel himself at this time was about 72 years of age. He was only a very young man when he interpreted Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And you notice here in this 7th chapter, he only gives the sum of the matters. It's just a review of certain key points of the dream that he had. The outstanding features of that particular dream. We find that as far as the dream itself is concerned, that it covers the first 14 verses and verses 21 and 22. The rest of the chapter, verses 15 to 20 and 23 to 27, are explanations given concerning the dream that he dreamed. The first question that we ask ourselves as we come to the 7th chapter of Daniel is, did the beast rise simultaneously from the sea or consecutively? Notice that 3rd verse. And 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. In other words, they all come up from the sea at once, thus indicating that they would be on the scene at the same time, or did they come up 1, 2, 3, 4? Let us notice the very language of the chapter. 4th verse. The first was like a lion. Now, if all 4 came up at the same time, how would you designate the first? Notice then the 5th verse. And behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear. 6th verse, after this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard. 7th verse says, and after this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast. After this I saw a 4th beast. Thus they came up 1, 2, 3, 4 in succession. Not all at once. Now Daniel was not particularly concerned about the first 3, but he was concerned about the 4th one and what he saw in regard to the 4th one. Notice the 16th verse. I came near to unto one of them that stood by and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of these things. These great beasts which are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth. Now notice the 19th verse. Then would I know the truth of the 4th beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, his nails of brass, which devoured and brake in pieces, and so forth, and of the 10 horns, and of the little horn. Daniel's attention was riveted on that 4th beast, with the 10 horns, and the horn that came up among them, and it was diverse and so forth. Now Daniel didn't have to ask too many questions about the first beast. And having given the interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar, he was not necessarily concerned about the others because he knew there was a succession. And he saw them coming up in succession. And so once he understood that first beast, no more questions of those 3. Why? No matter where Daniel walked in Babylon, no matter where he went into the office buildings where he worked, he saw that symbol. Verse 19. Behold, he shall come up like a lion from the swelling of the Jordan against the habitation of the strong. And verse 22. Behold, he shall come up and fly as the eagle, and spread his wings over Bozrah. And then dropping down to the 28th verse, concerning Kedar and concerning the kingdoms of Hazor, which Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon shall smite. Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon is pictured as coming up of the lion against the habitation of the strong, flying as an eagle. Daniel understood the symbol that he saw in the vision and gave the sum of the matters. We had an interesting experience one day, quite a number of years ago. We were living in Toronto, and I've told some of you this before. One Sunday afternoon, I said to Dorothea, let's take the girls and go to the museum. And so we went on the streetcar to Bloor and University. And there on the corner, I know it was one block down, or right there on the corner, was the Toronto Museum. And as we entered the door, they said the announcement was a special exhibit from archaeological research in Babylon. I was interested immediately. Well, I kept going a little faster than they wanted to go, but I wanted to find that particular section. And so they were looking at the various things, and I went on ahead, and I turned the corner, and there was this Babylonian display. And there was a mosaic cut out of, it was a wall of the floor. A lion with eagle's wings. Not exactly as it's symbolized here by an artist, but it was actually the lion, and it had the eagle's wings. The symbol of ancient Babylon. And so Daniel, when he saw that in the dream, he had no question. He knew what it was. Babylon. And so we find the basic prophecy again begins with Babylon. And goes down through Media, Persia, Greece, and then finally the fourth kingdom of Rome. Now I'd like to have you look at the 17th verse. These great beasts which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth. And of course it says the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom. So king and kingdom are used interchangeably. But notice it says, these great beasts which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth. Now, as far as you and I are concerned in the English language, what tense is that shall arise? Future tense, as we read it in the English. And there are those who read this verse, and because it reads in the English language future tense, they say that all of it is future. These four beasts that shall arise out of the earth. And it can't be possibly Babylon, that first one, because the Babylonian Empire had almost all passed. And so it's something in the future. Now notice the 10th verse. Fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands and thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. In our English language, what's that tense? Stood. All right, it could be present or the past. All right, there. It's not future, is it? In the Hebrew, the same identical Hebrew word is used and translated stood in this verse and shall arise in the other verse. Same identical Hebrew word. You see, in the Hebrew language, there are only two tenses. The perfect and the imperfect. Now, the imperfect is sometimes noted as the future, but as far as the Hebrew thinking is concerned, it is perfect or imperfect. Let me read you just a paragraph or so from Gesenius's Greek grammar, Hebrew grammar, and you'll see what he's saying, what the meaning is. This is in a section on the imperfect and its inflection. The imperfect, in contrast with the perfect, denotes the unfinished and continuity. That which is being done or coming to pass and is future. But also that which is in progress and in connected successions in past time. And then in another place in the same grammar, it says the perfect serves for the expression of the finished and past, which has come to pass and gone into effect. The imperfect expresses, on the contrary, the unfinished, and hence the continuing and progressive, even in past time, that which is coming into being and the future. And so how did they perceive it? Well, here are these four beasts. They were going to extend into the future. They came from the past, and the dream was not finished. Therefore, it is expressed in the Hebrew imperfect. Now, if it was a matter of a completed thing, they would express it in the Hebrew perfect. And so we find that those that would take the English literally, in this instance, correctly interpreted, either the future or the present or the past, have not done their homework. And I think it's very sad when individuals go forth in proclaiming themselves to be truly a voice to God's people, and they haven't done their homework adequately to know what is true. And so this is just one factor involved in the 7th chapter of Daniel that needs to be carefully noted. Let's go now to the 7th and 8th verses. And after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were the eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. We find that at this point in the vision of Daniel 7, the vision of Daniel 2 comes together. The fourth beast and the fourth kingdom are both pictured in relationship to iron. The fourth kingdom of Daniel 2 was iron. This fourth beast hath great iron teeth and subdues. Now we find then that there are 10 horns that are in this beast and come up. And I have here a paper that I'd like to have you have that gives you the divisions of the Roman Empire at this particular time. And so I'd like to have some of you pass them out. You will observe here on this sheet, I have listed the 7 and what they roughly represent in modern European terminology. And then quoted there is Daniel 7:8. There were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots. The Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths, all Aryan tribes. And you'll observe that the first quotation is from E.B. Eliot's The Hour of the Apocalypse, in which he says, I might cite 3 that were eradicated from before the Pope out of the first list given. The Heruli under Odoacer, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths. And then the next section here on this page is most interesting. These are footnotes found in the Dewey Bible on Daniel 7. And I have given them in notes in their entirety. And you will observe as you note these particular notes that while they state certain facts that are in line with history, they try to make the suggestion to kind of give them a little diversion to take the blunt away. All right, in chapter 7 on verse 3, this is what they say. 4 great beasts, the Chaldean or the Babylonian, the Persian, the Grecian, and Roman empires. Now, how much clearer do you want an interpretation? But some rather choose to understand the fourth beast of the successors of Alexander the Great, and more especially of them that reigned in Asia and Syria. Just divert it just a little bit back over there, and you don't have to get it on the papacy, see? All right, now on verse 7, the 10 horns. That is, 10 kingdoms among which the empire of the fourth beast shall be parceled. Or the 10 kings of the number of the successors of Alexander as figures of such as shall be about the time of the Antichrist. A statement and then a diversion. Verse 8, another little horn. This is commonly understood of Antichrist. It may also be applied to the great persecutor Antiochus Epiphanes as the figure of Antichrist. Very interesting, the Dewey version and their footnotes. And then I just put a quote in here from Sir Isaac Newton in his book on the Daniel and the Apocalypse, published in 1733. And he makes the comment that whatever their number was afterwards, they still are called the 10 kings from their first number. That's an observation by a student, a scientist who was also a student of prophecy. And so this gives us a little bit of an interesting background on the breaking up of the Roman Empire. Now we find a very interesting thing. When the Pope is crowned, and I understand this present Pope set this aside, but for the crowning of most of the popes, when they crown him as Pope after his election, what do they put on his head?
Crown.
Well, I know that, but what kind of a crown? A triple crown. Now, of course, they say that that makes him king of heaven and earth and the underworld, isn't it? Or that which is beneath. I want you to notice something, because much of the papacy is actually taken in a modification of Hebrew ceremonies and Hebrew background mixed in with paganism. Turn with me to 2 Samuel 29:30. 2 Samuel 29:30. 29th chapter and the 30th verse. Wait a minute. Then that's the 29 and 30 of some verse. Okay, I'm going to have to do a little looking here. I failed to put the chapter down. Okay. Let me see. Just give me a moment. I'll have to remember the paging. I hope I didn't go that far on the air. Well, anyway, I can tell you what it is in just a moment if I don't have it. Can't find it offhand. Well, anyway, it tells there about David. When he overthrew a king, they took that king's crown and put it on the head of David. It's what? Chapter 12. Okay, let's just go to that. I appreciate that very much. Chapter 12. All right, 29 and 30. Thank you. And David gathered all the people together and went to Rabbah and fought against it and took it. And he took their king's crown from off his head, the weight whereof was a talent of gold, from the precious stone, with the precious stones, and it was set on David's head. All right, you have a triple crown on the head of the Pope. You have the picture here in Daniel 7 of the 10 horns that were plucked up by the roots, a triple crown. Just an interesting parallel from the background of the experiences of the Old Testament. Then we find also that this particular, back to Daniel 7, that this particular power, this little horn, was to reign a certain period of time. It doesn't tell you in the actual facts of the dreams, but in the interpretation, it does tell you about that. Notice the 25th verse. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and a dividing of times. Using a day for a year, this makes 1,260 days or years, which actually extends from 538 to 1798. And I find that this date is even now being questioned. But I also want to give you some material so that you'll be able to check this through very closely and very carefully. I want to call your attention to some of the key quotations that you have. All right. I want to call your attention to some of the key quotations in this book of Facts of Faith so that you can see the actual verification of the dates upon which we have based our understanding of the 1,260 days. All right, here on the first page, at the bottom of the page, you have there, the reign of Justinian is more remarkable as a portion of the history of mankind than as a chapter in the annals of the Roman Empire or the Greek nation. The changes of centuries pass in rapid succession before the eyes of one generation. With the conquest of Rome by Belisarius, the history of the ancient city may be considered as terminating. And with the defense against Vitiges, in AD 538 commences the history of the Middle Ages. That's the Greece under the Romans, and you have the data there. Now it says even the papacy itself changed, so that there were a new order of popes after 538. Reading from Belmont and Monod. Down to the 6th century, all popes are declared saints in the Mariologies. Vigilus, 537 to 555 is the first of a series of popes who no longer bear this title, which is henceforth sparingly conferred. From this time on, the popes, more and more enveloped in worldly events, no longer belong solely to the church. They are men of the state and then rulers of the state. Now you'll notice here in the following paragraphs that he notes that the quotation should have read 538 instead of 537 because during that year there were actually 2 popes. And not until Severus died did they actually count the reign of Vigilius. Now then, coming down to Dr. Schaff's quotation at the bottom of page 53. Vigilius, a pliant creature of Theodora, ascended the papal chair under the military protection of Belisarius, 538 to 555. And so you have a beginning date. But more so, what did Justinian do? Turn the page to 54. Dr. Somerville gives the picture there. History of the Christian Church. Justinian enriched himself with the property of all the heretics, that is, non-Catholics, and gave all their churches to the Catholics. Published edicts in 538 compelling all to join the Catholic Church in 90 days or leave the empire, and confiscated all their goods. In other words, the date 538 is well attested and well established by historical documentation. And so all you have to do is add 1260 years to 538 and you come up with the date 1798. And that's the date that's being thrown in question today by some. Alright, let's just turn over the pages. In fact, there's a lot of material on here that I'm not going to read to you, or you can read for yourself, and that's why I made the full chapter. Go to page 57. The close of the 1260 years. This individual, if you'll notice, his name is Christian Edwardson, Swedish man. And so he got a hold of the official Swedish newspaper for March 29, 1798. And notice how he quotes from it and what it says. Rome, the 21st of February, 1798. Pope Pius VI has occupied the papal chair for all of 28 years, but the 15th instant, his government in the Papal States was abolished, and 5 days later, guarded by 100 French soldiers, he was taken away from his palace and his capital. His property was sold by the French, and among it were 700 head of cattle and 150 horses and 800 cords of wood. Poor Pius. He must have felt very sad as he left Rome to go into captivity, and when he departed, his tear-filled eyes were turned heavenward. A report from the Swedish official newspaper. Now if you'll turn the page, you'll find the explanation of what happened on the top of page 58. On the pretense of an insult to the French ambassador there, a French corps d'armes under Berthier, having in February 1798 crossed the Apennines from Ancona and entered Rome, the tricolor flag was displayed from the capital amidst the shouts of the populace. The Pope's temporal reign declared at an end, and the Roman Republic proclaimed in strict alliance, fraternization with the French. Then in the Sistine Chapel of the Vatican, the antehall of which has a fresco painted by papal order, commemorative of the Protestant massacre of St. Bartholomew's Day, there, while seated on his throne, and receiving the congratulation of his cardinals on the anniversary of his election to popedom, he was arrested by the French military, the ring of his marriage with the Church, Catholic Church, torn from his finger, his palace rifled, and himself carried prisoner into France, only to die there in exile shortly after. And you can go to page 59, and you find there that the English Jesuit notes that in 1797, Pope Pius fell grievously ill. Napoleon gave orders that should he die, no successor should be elected. But the Pope recovered. The peace was soon broken. Berthier entered Rome on the 10th of February and proclaimed a republic. The aged pontiff refused to violate his oath by recognizing it and was hurried from prison to prison in France. No wonder that half of Europe thought Napoleon's veto would be obeyed, and that with the Pope the papacy was dead. Then dropping to the bottom of the page, you have here from George Trevor, Canon of York. In the middle of that bottom paragraph, the papacy was extinct. Not a vestige of its existence remained, and among all the Roman Catholic powers, not a finger was stirred in its defense. What year? 1798. There's no reason under the sun to deny or to doubt this established date in Bible prophecy, from Bible prophecy. 1260 days and you have the historical data. That's why I made you the whole chapter. Keep it, because the book is very, very difficult to come by. Now there's something else that I want you also to share with you so that you can have this as a matter of the documentation. You will observe that this is taken from the Encyclopedia Britannica, Volume 17, the 1958 edition, and the pages are given. Now the reason why I have gone to this length and have made this particular thing available to you is because the same source that's trying to deny 1798 is trying to give as a basis for his decision and his teaching that the Encyclopedia Britannica teaches something different than I've read to you from the other sources of history. Now, it is true that he did obtain a quotation from an Encyclopedia Britannica of a later vintage by which he was able to sustain his position. But remember, the more recent editions of the Encyclopedia Britannica have alien influences that the earlier ones did not have. And I think you understand what I mean by alien influences. All right, let's just take a look at this particular quotation, and you'll find that it coincides. This is talking about Pius VI, who was reigning as Pope from 1775 to 1799. He died in exile in 1799. And you'll find that at the bottom of the page in that table. The papacy from 605 to 1800, and you have the list of all the popes, their names, and the time, and how long they reigned. 1775 to 99, Pius VI died in exile. But if you'll go here to the second column, that is on the right side of your page, you'll find in the first paragraph that begins there, about halfway down, where it says the French church was completely split. That's a brief of March 10 and so forth. The French church was completely split, half accepting, half defying the new regime. Pius was on good terms with the Allies against France in 1793 and felt that he could rely on them. But in 1796 he saw his territory invaded by General Napoleon Bonaparte. He sued for peace, which was granted on February 19, 1797 at Tolentino. But in the following December, 1797, a riot in Rome in which the French general, L. was killed, led to the occupation of Rome itself, February 15, 1798, and the proclamation of a republic. Pius was taken into captivity and died still a prisoner at Valence on August 29, 1799. Now there you have the three dates, 1797, 1798, and 1799. One, where he sued for peace. Then, because of the death of a French general, the armies of the French entered on February 15, 1798, coming right on the time of the day of the 1260 years, and proclaimed a republic, took him into captivity, and he died there the next year in 1799. There you have the complete data, and I think it's clear as far as the verification of the date is concerned. We find here that as far as Daniel 7 is concerned, that this little horn is not only anti-true God, but it's also anti the people of that God. And this is an important factor to understand as we continue the study of the prophecy. Notice verses 25 and 21. Verse 25, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, but he shall also wear out the saints of the Most High. This little horn is both anti-true God and anti the people of the true God. Then verse 21 says that when the judgment sits, the Ancient of Days comes, the judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. That is, against the little horn and what the little horn has done. Now the interesting thing about Daniel 7 and the most vital thing about Daniel 7, the most important thing about Daniel 7 is that it places the Antichrist in the framework of history. You destroy this chapter, and you destroy the whole basis of putting the finger on the papacy as the Antichrist. And this is what is happening in the reinterpretation of this prophecy. Now think. the little horn, the Antichrist, cannot come prior to the 10 horns. What does it say in the Scripture? He comes up after them. So therefore the Antichrist cannot be Nero or Antiochus Epiphanes. He comes up after the 10 horns. He must come up during the 10 horns because he comes up among them and prior to the judgment. Because it's in the judgment that the actions of the little horn are surveyed and judgment is rendered in behalf of the saints of the Most High. Therefore, the Antichrist cannot be a future person. Daniel, the 7th chapter, lines it up so that it can be only the papacy. My friend, we do not need Jesuits in the Adventist church when we have so many in the Adventist church that are proclaiming prophecy in harmony with the Jesuits. A friend of the Jesuits is just as bad as a Jesuit. You don't have to be a friend by shaking hands with them. You just be a friend by teaching what they teach and standing for what they stand. In fact, the history of Daniel 7 tells you only one thing, in the prophecy of Daniel 7 tells you only one thing as is fulfilled in history, that there is only one power, and only one that answers to this picture of prophecy, and that's the one-man government of the Catholic Church, the papacy, none other. Another factor that's pictured here as far as Daniel 7 is concerned is that little horn never is plucked up out of the head of that nondescript beast. It plucks up 3, but it's always in the head of that beast. Never out of it. And what is that beast? Rome. We should never refer to the Catholic Church as the Catholic Church or the Christian Church. It's only one name, and that's the Roman Church. And it's simply Romanism baptized into Christianity. Probably someday we'll not be able to say it that way, but that's the way it is. And maybe we'll have to say it that way if we're going to be numbered among those 3 worthies. And you'll need to know this prophecy to be able to stand up and put your finger and say it just as it needs to be said. We find that this symbolism is carried, or this concept of symbolism is carried forward in Revelation. The dragon in Revelation is both the devil and pagan Rome. And what about the first beast of Revelation 13? It receives power and authority from where? The dragon, pagan Rome. And did you ever think that that first beast of Revelation 13 is also a nondescript beast? Do you find any beast like that in the zoo? But you notice that it's the composite beast in Revelation 13 that you find in Daniel 7. What was this beast of Revelation 13 like? Go back to Revelation. Hold your place here in Daniel 7. Go to Revelation 13 and let's just notice the picture there that's given. And notice the parallel between this nondescript beast and the nondescript beast of Daniel 7. It says, the beast was like unto a leopard. His feet as the feet of a bear, and his mouth is the mouth of a lion. All right, now in Daniel 7, what did you have? You had lion, bear, leopard. And so you have it in the reverse order. Leopard, bear, lion, and a beast that you can't find in any animal book. Nondescript. And the fourth beast of Daniel 7 is likewise nondescript. We find also, as we noted last evening in 2 Thessalonians 2, this man of sin, in which all iniquity has fixed his abode, comes as a result of the energizing of Satan from pagan Rome right in. Now, if we come back to Daniel 7, let's begin noting now with the 9th verse. And first, just review. As we've come down through these 4 beasts, the little horn, at what point of time now have we come to? 1798. We've come down through the 1260 days, and because of the interpretation, we've come down now to 1798. Keep that date in mind. Then he says, I beheld till the thrones were cast down or placed, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands and thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. So, you see, Daniel is carried down in vision past 1798, and the next thing he sees is what? Judgment. What is that telling you? The judgment that's spoken of here is going to have to come after 1798. And in the 8th chapter we'll find out what date. 1844. I'm not going to go into detail on that now because we're going to go into detail on that probably tomorrow. But suffice it to say, we've come down as far as the prophetic stream is concerned in this prophecy of history, in this historical prophetic setting, to 1844. Now, there's something of interest here. In this judgment, who all is assembled? The entire angelic host are brought into this judgment. Now, without any disrespect for the teaching or the concept, as given in the type, unless we're going to be as the scholastic theologians of the Middle Ages, which we are not, you're not going to be able to get all the angelic host into a little room 10 cubits by 10 cubits by 10 cubits. We need to get the pictures that we have limited our thinking to out of our mind and realize that the most holy place in the heavens above is gigantic compared with the type that's found in the sanctuary here below. And this is not denying the ministry in the most holy place. And let that be clearly set forth. I am not in any way setting that aside, but I'm calling your attention to the fact that the prophecy demands a much larger room. A great palatial room, far larger than we can conceive of on earth, in which the entire heavenly host, thousands and thousands and 10,000 times 10,000 stand before Him. The judgment is set and the books are opened. And we'll study a little bit more about that in a little bit more. But we want to continue. Notice now the 11th verse. When the judgment was set and the books were opened, Daniel says, I beheld then. Give me your text where it tells you that he spoke during the 1260 days great words. Turn to Daniel 7:25. And he shall speak what? But you're reading something that's not in the text. It's italicized. He spoke words against the Most High and sought to wear out the saints of the Most High. It was not until after 1844 that Daniel heard great words from the little horn. And here's something that we need to clearly understand. Now let's go one step at a time. What's the first great words that he spoke after 1844? What did he speak first? The which? Well, you got a little fast on that. Go back a little further in history between 1844 and that. The dogma of the Immaculate Conception in 1854. That's number one. And that means clearly that the issue of the incarnation is a vital issue in the final struggle. All right, what's the next great words that he spoke? The doctrine of the doctrine of the papal infallibility. What was the year? 1870. All right, what's the third great word that he's spoken? What? What? All right, the bodily ascension of Mary into heaven in 1950. Now, does that bring it up into modern times? Does it bring it up into our era? Absolutely. In 1950, began some interesting events in a church called Seventh-day Adventist. You know, these individuals that say that this prophecy of Daniel 7 and Daniel 8 is stale and unprofitable and is a face-saving device, have not reckoned with the prophecy. This prophecy extends and comes right up to our very hour, to the very time in which we live, and deals with the events that are taking place now, here, even now, in our own time. And I hope that in our discussion, and then further as we analyze this Daniel 7, we'll be able to go in and analyze the things within our own church structure as they began in 1950. And see the picture. All right, now we find that we've come up here. I beheld the word because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake. And keep in mind that there are three factors here. While two of them involve Mary, one is involved with the incarnation as far as Mary is concerned. The other concerns Mariolatry. And remember that this present Pope is a devotee of the Virgin Mary. And I don't know what he's going to promulgate. The other one has to do with papal infallibility. Again, the demand of the worshiping of man. The authority of a man speaking ex cathedra and dictating dogma contrary to the Scripture. I wish we had time to go into all these factors of Catholicism, because all of these factors are going to have a bearing in this final conflict, and they're going to have a bearing on you and me. Because barring accidental death and the breaking of the silver cord in the life of one or two or so, every last one of you individuals that are sitting here this day are going to face those issues, because they're coming with a rapidity that's unbelievable. And you better be prepared and aware of that particular fact. Now as we continue on in this 7th chapter, some more interesting things. This beast